The story that you are about to hear is a compilation of documented true facts, featuring characters, events, or places that has played a role in shaping history. Please sit back and listen as I recite this narrative for you.
Pedro Rodrigues Filho is a Brazilian serial killer who pursued and killed other criminals. He is responsible for at least 70 murders, 10 of which he committed before he reached the age of 18. Described by one analyst as the perfect psychopath, someone with no remorse and no compassion for others, Rodrigues went after other criminals and those who had wronged him. Pedro Rodrigues Filho was born on a farm in Santa Rita do Sopaco, Minas Gerais, on July 17, 1954. His father's name was also Pedro Rodrigues, and the Filho is the Portuguese equivalent of putting Junior after someone's name. His mother's name is unknown. During a fight, his father kicked his pregnant mother in the stomach, bruising his skull. He was also physically abused by his father during his childhood. He claimed he first felt the desire to kill when he was 13 years old, when he shoved an older cousin into a sugarcane press, nearly killing him. He shot the deputy mayor of Santa Rita do Sopaco with a shotgun that belonged to his grandfather when he was 14 years old. He shot him in front of the municipal hall because his father, a school guard, had been fired by the deputy mayor for allegedly stealing food from the school kitchen. He then killed the security guard, whom he believed of being the real thief. Rodrigues escaped to Mogi das Cruzes, Greater Sao Paulo, in order to escape criminal persecution, where he began robbing drug dens and killing traffickers. There he met Maria Aparecida Olympia, nicknamed Butinha, and they began living together. Butinha became pregnant. In order to support himself and the girl he was now living with, the young boy started doing the same jobs as the people he had murdered. He became a drug trafficker. He eliminated rivals, killing 3 of his past associates in the process. But rival gang members retaliated and shot Butinha, killing her and the baby. Later, he recruited some soldiers and set up his own business. In search of revenge for the death of Butinha and his unborn child, he tortured and killed several people, trying to find out who was responsible. The gang leader, a rival who had been betrayed by his ex-wife, received a visit from Rodrigues and 4 friends during a wedding party. They left a trail of 7 dead and 16 wounded. Rodrigues had yet to reach 18 years old. Months after the massacre, he discovered that the boyfriend of his favorite cousin had impregnated her but refused to marry her, and fatally shot him in revenge. Still in Mogi, Rodrigues found out that his father was in prison for murdering and dismembering his mother with a machete. He visited his father in prison and killed him by stabbing him 22 times. After the murder, he carved his heart out and bit a piece of it. He spat some of it back out onto his father. Rodrigues continued to kill many criminals. He would find out who they were, look up their addresses, and then go to their house and kill them. He was finally arrested on May 24, 1973. He was almost 19 years old. After his arrest, police records show that he was once put on a muffler to be transported with another prisoner, both handcuffed, and that when they went to open the car, the other prisoner was already dead. Rodrigues took responsibility for the crime, justifying it by claiming that his companion was a rapist. During his incarceration, he continued to kill people in prison, claiming the lives of 47 inmates. He sometimes killed inmates because of his past as a killer of criminals, and he felt he deserved retribution, which caused a majority of the prison population to hate him. In one attack by other inmates, Rodrigues was ambushed, but he killed 3 of his attackers and injured the other 2. Other inmates were chosen randomly. One of his victims, a cellmate and career criminal, was killed simply because he snored too much. Rodrigues said that his favorite weapon was a knife. Some of his victims were killed because, according to him, the thrill of killing another criminal was wonderful and satisfying. Rodrigues was almost released from prison in 2003, but the release request was turned down because of his murders inside prison. He killed and wounded dozens of fellow criminals in order to survive. To leave no doubt about his willingness to kill, he tattooed on his left arm, "I kill for pleasure," later covered by another tattoo. He was officially released on April 24, 2007, but he was arrested again at his house on September 15, 2011, and convicted of riot and false imprisonment. He didn't kill anybody while out of prison. He had, however, participated in riots as well as kidnapping, which is why he served the additional 7 years. He admitted that his only motivation to be released was the fact that he had a girlfriend out of prison, a former prisoner whose name he did not reveal, whom he had met by exchanging letters. After serving 12 years for theft, the woman was released and visited Rodrigues in prison. Though Rodrigues was initially sentenced to 128 years in prison, the crimes he committed while he was in jail increased his sentence to 400 years. But by Brazilian law, the maximum prison sentence is 30 years. He served an additional 4 for the murders he carried out in prison. He was released after 34 years in prison after having 71 confirmed murders. Due to Brazilians' repelling of the decree that declares that diagnosed psychopaths can be held indefinitely, and the fact that Brazil's maximum prison sentence is 30 years, Filho was released in 2018. He has since started a YouTube channel talking about his experiences and is preparing a documentary about his life. Clementine Barnabat was an American serial killer who was convicted of killing one person and claimed to have killed as many as 35. Barnabat, deemed as the first African-American serial killer, was the self-proclaimed voodoo priestess of a cult called the Church of Sacrifice. She confessed to brutally murdering families with an axe and believed that human sacrifice was the path to immortality. Clementine Barnabat is believed to have been born around 1894 in St. Martinville, Louisiana, to Nina Porter and Raymond Barnabat, and had a brother named Zephyrin. Barnabat's father reportedly abused his family, which moved to Lafayette in 1909. At the age of 17, Clementine and her father, Raymond, and brother Zephyrin started the cult known as the Church of Sacrifice. They believed that killing sinners would make them immortal. With 2 other unidentified members, they carried out the ritualistic killings on African American families. Between 1911 and 1912, in towns along the Southern Pacific Railroad line running through Louisiana and Texas, a minimum of 12 African American families were murdered in their homes. All the murders occurred at night, and an axe was used to fracture the skulls of the victims. On February 1911, Clementine, along with the other members, entered the home of the Byers family in Crowley. Walter, his wife, and their young son were bludgeoned to death with an axe, lying in bed with their skulls split open. The bed was drenched in blood, and bloody footprints speckled the floor. The doors were locked, indicating that the killer had come in through a window and murdered the family while they slept. There was a bucket of blood in one corner, and at the head of the bed, just above the bashed-in bodies, stood a bloodied axe. Later that same month, the Andrews family, Alexander, his wife Mimi, and their 2 children, Joachim and Agnes, suffered the same fate of the Byers at the hands of the church. Their bodies were arranged together in the blood-drenched bed of the parents, and the axe used was left in the scene of the crime for the investigators to find. Sheriff Luis Lacoste soon identified Garcon Godfrey, a recently escaped lunatic, as their primary suspect. In March 22, 1911, the church went after Louis Cassaway, his wife, and their 3 children. The difference was that the murder happened in Texas, and Mrs. Cassaway was Caucasian. At first, the murders were thought to have been a result of a hate crime, but Raymond's mistress approached the police and claimed that he confessed to committing the murders during one of their quarrels. Raymond was arrested because he had a long rap sheet and was known to have a violent temper. In the autumn of 1911, Raymond Barnabat stood trial in Louisiana for the murders of the Byers Andrews, and Castaway families. His daughter Clementine and son Zephyrin both testified against Raymond, claiming he had returned home with bloodied clothes and boasting of the Andrews murders. Both children said they feared for their life if their father was free. In October 1911, a Louisiana jury convicted him of murder. Raymond's attorney successfully filed for an appeal, but he was held in jail pending a new trial. In November 1911, while Raymond was imprisoned, Norbert and Asima Randall of Lafayette were murdered with their 4 children in a manner similar to the previous slayings. Norbert had been shot in the head before he was bludgeoned with an axe. The children, Albert Ceci, 8 years old, Renee, 6 years old, Norbert Jr., 5 years old, and Agnes, 2 years old, had been beaten to death with the blunt side of an axe. The murder weapon was left at the scene of the crime. Since the murders took place while Raymond was in jail, Sheriff Lacoste suspected that he was not alone in the murder spree. Clementine lived a few blocks away and came under suspicion due to the blood on the fence latch of her house and bloody clothes found in her bedroom. Clementine, Zephyrin, and 2 other cult members were taken into custody for questioning, but Zephyrin was released when he was able to provide an alibi for the night of the murders. While Clementine and Raymond were both held in custody, the axe murders of families continued. Under Zephyrin's leadership, by January 1912, 3 more murders occurred. The third family were the Broussards. Felix, his wife, and their 3 children were killed in Lake Charles, Louisiana. The suspects played the victims' hands apart with pieces of wood and left a version of Psalm 9:12 in the King James Bible handwritten on the wall. When he maketh the inquisition for blood, he forgotteth not the cry of the humble, and signed it Human 5, leading investigators to believe that multiple murderers were involved. Eventually, investigators would get at least some of their answers. On April 5, 1912, Clementine made a full confession admitting to 17 murders. She claimed she had bought a voodoo charm meant to protect her while committing her crimes and said that she and her accomplices drew lots to see who would commit the murders. She also said that she disguised herself as a man to better lurk unnoticed at night. She declared she killed the children because she did not wish them left orphans in the world. Her motives for the crimes, however, were never made clear. She explained her connection to the Church of Sacrifice, an offshoot of a Christ-sanctified Holy Church congregation in Lake Charles, Louisiana. Clementine further claimed that a priestess of the Church of Sacrifice had given her and her friends conjure bags, which is a good luck charm found in hoodoo that would grant them supernatural powers and make them undetectable to the authorities. This hoodoo time spurred Barnabat into committing her first murder to test whether or not the claim of magical protection was true. Despite investigators' suspicions regarding Clementine's confession, the stories about her continued to circulate. Brunner officially filed charges against her on April 14, 1912. While she sat in jail, she confessed to a total of 35 murders but kept retelling her story with differing details that make it hard to know the truth. Her confession was described in contemporary reports as very self-contradictory, such as sometimes claiming to have committed the murders alone and other times to have acted with others. She had to undergo several examinations, deeming her sane and fit for trial. In October 1912, Clementine Barnabat was sentenced to life in prison at Angola State Penitentiary. In July 1913, she tried to escape jail but was caught. However, in August 1923, Barnabat was released from prison after an unspecified surgical operation was believed to have cured her. 6 months after her disappearance, the Axeman of New Orleans murders started. The similarity of the killings led the authorities to believe that Clementine was behind the killings, but she could not be located, and the investigations led nowhere. After Barnabat's release, no knowledge exists on her whereabouts.
Hey everyone! I just wanted to express how grateful I am that you took the time to listen to my narration. Hopefully you enjoyed it. I am Twysted Mind and please enjoy the rest of your day. Salamat!